While the Atlanta Braves could be getting an outfielder back soon in the form of Ronald Acuna Jr., they will be losing one in the form of Eddie Rosario, who will be out for a while with an injury. We'll talk about that and discuss the fallout of that injury news, as well as get to your Twitter questions in this episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we're talking about your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on Twitter at shortstopball. You can check out my bio there to see everywhere I'm covering the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves, in written form over at tomahawktake.com. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube as well. And as always, thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen each and every day. And just a reminder, we post episodes daily, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and are free and available on all platforms. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta as well, where you can get the postcast after just about every game with me and Grant McCauley. And you can get the audio version of that on the Locked On Braves podcast feed. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Eddie Rosario injury and news and some of the fallout from that. And then we're going to be taking a bunch of your Twitter questions. The Braves have another off day on Monday, and then we'll preview their upcoming series with the Chicago Cubs and how they are going to get their first series win of the year. But let's start with the big news from Monday, and that is that the Braves will be without Eddie Rosario for an undisclosed amount of time. It was announced or reported earlier in the night by Carlos Baerga that he was going to be having surgery and being out for several weeks, and then it was later confirmed by the Atlanta Braves themselves, who said he saw a retinal specialist and will undergo a laser procedure in the coming days to correct blurred vision and swelling in his right eye. So not a timetable at the moment for Eddie Rosario, but you got to imagine it's going to be at least several weeks here that they're going to be without the outfielder, who has gotten off to a slow start, and this perhaps explains some of that. And that kind of gets into the first question that I wanted to answer tonight, coming from World Series champs Zay Dog on Twitter. Says, what voodoo magic do we need to do to get Eddie to get some hits? And before this news broke on Monday, I had actually already written an article on tomahawktake.com pointing out the fact that Eddie Rosario is notoriously a slow starter. He has a career average of 213 in March, April games, which I think most of us would have taken right now, but I wasn't worried about him to begin with. I felt like he would get going, but this news certainly indicates there was something else going on there, not just in the plate, but in the field as well with that blurred vision. So hopefully he gets that corrected, and when he comes back, he'll be more like the Eddie Rosario we are used to seeing. As far as the fallout from that, who benefits the most from playing time with Rosario gone? Obviously, Ronald Acuna Jr. should be coming back next week, whether that's next Monday or next Friday. We still are not sure yet. I'm starting to lean towards it'll be more like May 2nd, so next Monday, to start that series in New York against the Mets. But either way, that will be a big boost, regardless of the Eddie Rosario news. That was already going to be a big boost. I think we'll start to see more Travis Demerit. At least that's kind of what I'm hoping. Let's see if the changes he's made are for real. I mean, he showed it in a small sample size at Gwinnett, but let's see what he can do. He's already got a couple of hits at the big league level for the Braves this year. So hopefully he gets a little bit more run in the outfield. I don't really want to see more Alex Dickerson in the outfield, but I would imagine he probably gets even more starts now, as he would replace the left-handed bat that is Eddie Rosario. Again, the Braves were already very shallow on left-handed bats, so losing Rosario really hurts a lot in that regard. So you're probably going to see Dickerson get some more starts in the lineup, but I think you probably will see a little bit more of Demerit. You'll probably see a little bit more of Heredia, especially when Acuna comes back. I think that's what you could see is a Heredia, Duvall, Acuna outfield with Ozuna at DH, with Demerit and Dickerson getting starts here and there. But it'll be interesting to see how things play out this week, especially until Acuna comes back again. The Braves just don't have a lot of lefties in their lineup. That was the big reason they needed to go out and get Rosario, and now he's going to be out for looks like a significant amount of time here with that surgery. But again, best of luck to Rosario, and certainly sending prayers out to him. Hope that the surgery goes well, and hope that he's able to rejoin the Braves soon and again become that super Rosario that we loved seeing from the postseason. All right, moving on to some of your Twitter questions here. The next one comes from Tim, ASU family fan, says, Freed extension, when should it be offered, for how many years, and how much money will it be for? This is something we discussed a lot during the offseason, and my feelings about it are you have to be careful when giving extensions to starting pitchers. And look, Freed is the ace the Braves have been looking for since John Smoltz. So you got a chance to lock this guy up and keep him around for a long time. I understand the desire to do so, and I think there will be some interest from Alex Anthopoulos in doing just that. But you got to be very careful giving out contract extensions to starting pitchers. I think if you're looking for a comparison, Jose Barrios and his recent contract extension is a pretty good comp. Barrios is a year younger, but only had 1 year of control left, while Max Fried is under team control for 2 more years following this season. So not exactly, apples to apples here, but I think the type of deal Barrios got, which was 7 years and 131 million, is something similar to what I think Max Fried could get. I think you could buy out his last 2 arbitration years, so maybe 11 million in 23, 15 million in 24, and then 24 million for the next 4 years, which is what Barrios is getting in the bulk of his deal. That'd be 6 years, 122 million. That would take Fried through his age 34 season. I think that's probably what it will take. I doubt Alex Anthopoulos does it because of the risk, and he likes to eliminate as much risk as possible with these long-term contracts. I know he just handed out a huge one to Matt Olson, but again, a position player, still relatively young. I just don't see Alex taking that type of risk on a starting pitcher and locking up that much money to a starting pitcher, but could be wrong. And I do think, that's what it would take. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do that. It would make me a little nervous about that deal going forward. The 2022 contract for Max Fried still isn't finalized, so there's a chance, they could work something out now. But in terms of when these talks are likely to happen, I think that will be during the offseason if they do happen at all. I don't see anything happening before the end of the 2022 season, not when the Braves still have him under control again for 2 more seasons. So if they do start talking, I think it's this offseason. I think something around 6 years, 120 million would make sense. And then John McDonald at John_Mac15 on Twitter says, looking ahead to May, what is the lowest record you would be comfortable with the Braves having and them still being able to be a NL East contender? Part of that depends on the Mets. And as I'm recording this Monday night, they just came back in the 9th inning to beat the Cardinals. Look, this is a different Mets team. They are not going to slow down and let you come back and win this division. You can't fall too far behind. That being said, at the end of May, as long as the Braves aren't more than 10 games under 500, so, no worse than a 20-30 record, I would still think they have a chance in the division. It would be a very tough road at that point. They'd have to go 75-37 the rest of the way to get to 95 wins. That's a 670 win percentage. Again, not impossible, but certainly would be tough. If much worse than that, again, I think you really start to have to be concerned about their chances of winning the division, just because I don't see the Mets really slowing down much this year. I definitely don't see them falling off a cliff like they basically did last year. You look at 2019, the Nats were 24-33 in 9 games back in the division at the end of May. They obviously didn't come back to win the NL East as the Braves did that, but they ended up winning 93 games, which had them 4 back in the division. So, that would be a pretty similar comparison there. They were 24-33, 9 games under 500 at the end of May, and they came back and still won 93 games. So you could see the Braves perhaps having a run like that, but still, that'd be incredibly difficult. Let's hope that's not what we're talking about at the end of May. Next, got some more questions from Twitter, including some about Austin Riley and the bullpen, as well as the defensive alignment for the Braves going forward. We'll get to those next. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Our next question comes from Chris Shaffy84 on Twitter. Says Riley seems to be off to another hot start. Do you see him getting a long-term contract soon? Do you feel the Braves will click and hit their stride when Acuna comes back, or will it be sooner or later? On the Riley front, kind of similar to Max Fried, I do think talks begin to happen this offseason, this coming offseason. He's still under 3 years of team control after this offseason, but I do think those talks begin to happen. And I actually like the chances of Fried or Riley getting extended more than Fried, just because of the risk I mentioned with starting pitching. But I do think Riley becomes an extension candidate either this offseason or next offseason. I'm not sure as far as Acuna coming back and the Braves clicking. That's a lot of pressure to put on him for that to start happening right away. He still needs to get up to major league speed. I know he looks great at the AAA level, but still, it's a different speed at the big leagues. But I do think he gets there eventually. And when that happens, I do think he fixes a lot of the issues that the Braves have, particularly getting on base for the middle of the order at the top of the lineup and outfield defense, which has been two of the more glaring weaknesses for this Braves team. So Ronald covers a lot when he is back. So I certainly think, again, once he's up to full speed, I think the Braves will start clicking a lot more. Next question from Freddie, the Freddie DT on Twitter says, what happened to the dominant bullpen we heard about coming into the season? Premature assumption, too early to judge. Struggles on the mound are frequent. I definitely think it's too early to judge, but you look at the night shift guys, Minter, Matzik, Smith, and now Jansen replacing Luke Jackson, and they've all been great. They've all lived up to expectations. Even O'Day has been great as well so far. McHugh is really the only high leverage guy who hasn't been as advertised out of the bullpen. And I wrote about this the other day on tomahawktake.com. I feel like if he goes back to throwing that slider more often, he'll start getting better results. Again, I don't know, for whatever reason, he's been throwing his cutter a lot more, and that is getting hit hard. Batters are hitting over 450 against that cutter when a slider is his best pitch. So I feel like that's an easy adjustment for him. Throw your best pitch more often. Why wouldn't you? And I think we'll start seeing better results from him. So again, you look at the guys who are, supposed to be there, the lockdown guys, they've done their jobs. There's been a couple of blow-ups for McHugh, a couple of blow-ups from Sean Newcomb, who's no longer with the team. So again, the high leverage guys have done their job. They've been there. It's more of the lower guys on the chain in the bullpen that have had some blow-ups to make it look worse than it actually is. Also, when we start seeing starters go deeper into games, you're routinely seeing Fried and Morton and hopefully Ian Anderson and Kyle Wright, going 6-7 innings deep into a game. It will limit the need for some of those middle inning guys like McHugh and O'Day, which again, O'Day's been great. And that'll really rely more on the night shift and Matzik and Smith and Jansen and Minter, getting it done at the back end. So I think you'll start to see less of those hiccups in the middle innings, the sixth innings, fifth and sixth innings that we've been seeing. So I still think this bullpen will be one of the best in baseball. And again, early season results in the bullpen can really sway things one way or the other very quickly. And again, we've seen some blowups with McHugh, with Sean Newcomb, and some others that have really inflated the bullpen ERA thus far. And then our final question here comes from Brando, JAVGB2 on Twitter says, what do you think is the ideal defensive alignment once Acuna returns and is back to playing the field? I initially had wrote that I would go Rosario in left, Duvall in center, and Acuna in right to start things off. Without Rosario, I think you probably see without Rosario, I would probably go Heredia in center, Duvall in left, and Acuna in right field. And you can probably go back and forth between Duvall and Heredia in center. Um, I'm not sure who exactly has more range there, but I think you could toss it up between those two. Once fully healthy, I'd go Acuna in center field, Rosario in left field, and Duvall in right field. I'm still hoping the Braves find a true center fielder at some point this year so Acuna can stay in right field. But until that happens, I think Acuna, once at full speed, is the best option in center field because of his range. Again, I love Duvall. I've gone over it several times on the podcast here. I've gotten killed in the comment sections for trying to say that Duvall is anything less than a great defensive outfielder. And I'm not saying that. I've never said that. He's a great defensive outfielder. I just think he doesn't have the range of a true center fielder. He's not getting to some of the balls that somebody with elite sprint speed would get to. So that's why I think eventually Acuna ends up in center field. I would love for him to stick in right, and I would love for them to find a true defensive first center fielder. That's why I was on board with Pache starting the year on the roster if he were still here. And you stick Duvall in left where he's a gold glover. You stick Ronald Acuna Jr. in right where he's a gold glover. And you have Pache in center field who's a potential gold glover. Obviously, that can't happen now, but that was my initial thoughts. I think outfield defense is very important. I think we've seen what happens when you don't have good outfield defense already this year. So that's probably how I would shake it up when Acuna is fully healthy. Put him back in center, put Duvall in right. And that gives you two, potentially gold glove options there in center and right field. And then you just kind of have to live with what you get in left out of, Zuna, Rosario when he's back, Heredia, who can be solid defensively, but whoever else you put out there. The Braves will be looking to get their first series win of the year as the Cubs come to town for a 3-game series. We'll preview that next. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. This is the series the Braves get it done. It's time. We are over 2 weeks into the season. It's time for the Braves to get their first series win. They have Max Reed, Charlie Morton, and Kyle Wright taking the mound in this series against the Cubs. They have to get it done. And let's start by looking at those pitching matchups. On Tuesday, you'll have Marcus Stroman against Max Fried. Rain forecast is calling for possibly rain on Tuesday. It looks like it is potentially starting to clear up a little bit, so hopefully that game gets played. Couple of rough starts for Stroman. His last 2 appearances gave up 5 earned and 4 innings at Colorado, which can happen to the best starting pitcher. But then he gave up 7 earned and 4 1/3 innings against the Rays his last time out. So coming up back-to-back really bad outings, hopefully that trend continues. Hopefully he's not due for a great outing here, a good bounce back outing against the Braves. Ozzie Albies is 5 for 13 against him. Duvall 3 for 6 with a home run. Swanson 5 for 11. So hopefully those guys will get it going, particularly Duvall and Swanson at the bottom of the lineup will get things going against Stroman. Fried was dominant in his last inning, 7 innings, 2 hits, no walks, no earned, and 8 Ks at Dodger Stadium. Looking for a continuation of that. Jonathan Villar has the most at-bats against Fried and is 4 and 11. Ian Happ is 2 for 2 with a home run, and Yan Gomes is 3 for 5 with a home run against him. And this will be our first look at Seiya Suzuki, who is off to a great start in Major League Baseball, hitting .335 with 4 home runs. So, or .354 with 4 home runs. So a great start for Seiya Suzuki. It'd be exciting to get to see him. Hopefully the Braves are able to slow him down a little bit as he's making things look way too easy moving over to Major League Baseball. On Wednesday, it's Mark Lyder Jr. versus Charlie Morton. Look, no offense to Mark Lyder Jr. This has to be a win, not only because Lyder has given up 9 earned runs in 7 1/3 innings this year, but Charlie Morton is due for a clean start after back-to-back clunkers, just not getting off to great starts in those starts. So I'm looking for Charlie Morton to really have a bounce back outing. I know I said that last time and it didn't quite happen, but I don't think we're going to have 3 in a row bad starts from Charlie. If we do, I'm going to start getting worried a little bit about him. But this pitching matchup on paper, this has to be a win for the Braves in this game. And then the finale on Wednesday, old friend Drew Smiley will be going up against Kyle Wright. And wouldn't you know, Smiley off to a fantastic start with the Cubs. He has a 2.45 ERA through 3 starts and a 1.02 whip. He didn't give up a run in either of his first 2 starts, but gave up 4 earned on 6 hits and 1 walk his last time out, which came against the Pirates. So hopefully he's starting to come back a little bit to earth after a couple of good outings to begin the season. He's not striking out a ton of batters, but he's getting weak contact and a lot of chases on pitches out of the zone. As far as Braves hitters who have faced him, Albies, Duvall, Olson, Ozuna, Riley, and Swanson are just a combined 5 for 19, which is not terrible, but not great either. Ozzie, Duvall, and Olson have all homered off of him, so hopefully we see that. Wright is currently 4th in the league in ERA at 1.06, second in strikeouts among starters with 3 starts at 26, and 8th in whip at 0.76. So, again, hopefully that trend continues for Kyle Wright. We see another good outing out of him. The Cubs do have the highest OPS in baseball through the first 6 games or first 16 games, so could be a tough outing for Wright and the Braves pitching staff, but they've also played 6 games against the Pirates, 1 in which they scored 21 runs, and they played 4 games at Coors Field. So again, with early season numbers, you got to take them all a little bit with a grain of salt and look a little deeper into them. So those offensive numbers could be a little bit inflated based on opponents and where they played. Cubs pitching ranks 21st in baseball with a 4.11 ERA. Their starters rank 26th with a 5.60 ERA. Their bullpen on the flip side has actually been very solid. So need to get to those starters in these games, get off to quick starts. And again, this has to be a series win, especially once again with the Braves having their 3 best pitchers going. So I'm expecting a Braves series win, if not a series sweep. Time for the Braves to pick themselves off and get things going and get on a hot streak before they go back out on the road. That will do it for this episode of Lockedon Braves. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at @Lockedon_Braves. You can follow me at Shortstop Ball. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast and subscribe to us on YouTube. And we will talk to you next time.